Did you find your mouse?
No, I don't know where it is. Well, it's because I worked in the library yesterday, and so
Okay.
I brought everything with me to the library. And libraries are like the single most underutilized resource that we have, I feel. I work in the library like maybe 2-3 days a week. And think about, it's like everybody goes to coffee shops. Like, well, that's kind of stupid. You still got to pay for the coffee, but then you feel like everybody's looking at you like you're a jerk if you like stay for longer than an hour. A library, you are quite literally supposed to stay for a long time. Nobody talks, but you still have that kind of like, it's funny because when I do focused work, I need to be in a place where there's other people kind of milling around. Mm-hmm. But when I'm doing kind of dumb, like administrative work that you sometimes have to do when you run a company, I like being by myself in my office and just like blasting good music. Yeah. But the more focused work I'm doing, the more people I need around. Now, I don't want to talk to any of them, but the more people that I want around. So when I go to write and stuff like that, which is like the most focused, like cognitively draining work that I do, it's always like in the library or something like that. But coffee shops I never really like, because the library, you can bring in food, you can bring in coffee, you can bring in drinks, and you are supposed to sit there for as long as you want. And then you're surrounded by books. So if I want a break, I just go and like browse the books and like find a new like Neil Gaiman book or something like that to bring home that night.
I'm way too loud to work in the library. Like I talk to myself out loud and I sing and like move too much. And like I'm really obnoxious. Yeah. They'd kick me out.
That's amazing. All right, let me talk to you about the last 2 days. Len, good to see you. Let me talk to you about the last 2 days. This is this is me.
I didn't know how to respond.
Okay, I have a new GIF for you now. Thank you.
This is me not having figured anything out, but feeling like I kind of started to maybe figure something out that I want to pass on. And so before I share this, I want to actually say, like, I haven't figured anything else yet. It's been 2 days. So just know
it's no holding to anything.
Just know that it's been 2 days. This is not John Goodman saying that you have to do this, because and I'm worried because you have all of these like single 20-year-old life coaches who are like telling people how to live their life based off of something that they figured out, and I don't want to be wrapped up in all of that. Anyway, what I have done the last 2 days is I haven't gone on my phone. Like, Amber, when I logged on to do this podcast, and I logged on with you at like 10:29 or whatever it was, because we record at 10:30. When I logged on at like 10:29 was the first time I turned on my phone for the day. And I turned on my music for my workout and the Quick Coach app, because the Quick Coach app is slick. And so I turned on the Quick Coach app and I did my workout. But beyond that, I didn't actually go on my phone at all. And I didn't yesterday either. Yesterday I got up. Normally what would happen is I'd get up and I'd go and put on a pot of coffee, and then I'd sit on the couch for like 20 minutes or whatever it is and answer messages on Instagram and check in on email and check in on Facebook and get kind of like wrapped up in what it was. And I was frustrated because I wasn't then present with my family in the morning for like breakfast time. But I was also just like thinking about stuff that I can't affect because I couldn't really do anything until I had like my mornings are I drop off Calvin at school. Like I'll make food for Calvin and Allison and myself. And then we'll have breakfast and then I'll drop off Calvin at school. Allison will sometimes walk with us and then I'll usually go work out and then I'll come back. And I'm not doing anything at work until I actually get down at my computer anyway. But I found that even my workouts were very, very scattered and I wasn't focused in them. And so this idea, I mean, I'm not the first person to say don't go on your phone in the morning, but I feel like I just kind of figured out that it actually seems to maybe work. And what I'll tell you, though, how I made sense of it to myself, because here's where I think that it actually comes full circle, is I have 3 competing priorities in my life. There's like 3 major competing priorities in my life. There's health and fitness, there's business, and there's family. And I wrap in community in there too, but like family, community. And I have not ever figured out a way to optimize all 3 of them at the same time. Mm-hmm. And to the point where I actually, one of the many names for this podcast was going to be something around this idea of the triangle, of this everlasting search of trying to figure out a way to get these 3 arms of the triangle to finally balance. Because I've never been able to do that, right? You've got family, you've got health and fitness, and then you've got business. And I've been able to pretty successfully optimized 2 of them at a time and not the third. And I've kind of now accepted that that's the way. Now, when I say optimize, I want to kind of define that, because optimizing to me means that I'm trying to push it forward. I'm trying to actively get better at that thing. We as humans seem to really exist well in a state of homeostasis. As fitness professionals, we kind of understand this. The body exists in a state of homeostasis. If you're really fit, it actually takes a fair amount of effort to get more fit and also to get less fit. Like, you can get out of shape, but you can get back to that point you were at previously pretty easily. What's really, really hard is getting out of that state, right? It's this state of homeostasis. And it's the same with business, really. Like, if you really understand business and you have a good business, maintaining that business is relatively easy. For the most part, you get into a state of homeostasis with it. But improving that business is actually really hard. It takes a lot of effort. And the way to actually improve these things is really intense short bursts, where you're like actively trying to almost like leap a rung on the ladder. It's not like a step. It's not like a soft kind of progression. It's almost like a stepwise, like quantum leap type thing. Like, you got to push really, really hard for a short period of time. You get yourself up to that new rung on the ladder, to that new level. And then that's your new normal, right? That's your new homeostasis. And so when I say optimize, what I mean is that I'm actively like pushing hard to try to improve, to try to get to that next rung on the ladder. I have not been able to actively do that to 3 things at the same time. But I've been able to do 2. And so for me, family is always like optimized. Like, it's just too important. So I'm always trying to do that. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I fail. But then it's the competing priorities of business and fitness. And I have found that it's very, very hard to really push forward on both of them at the same time. But it's relatively okay. I won't say easy, because it's not easy, but it's relatively okay for me to really push on one of them and maintain the other one. Now, maintaining the other one doesn't mean that good things aren't happening. Doesn't mean that I'm not working out or whatever it is, but it means that I'm not like cranking for it. And the reason why this is important is I used to feel a tremendous amount of guilt at not pushing hard on one thing if the other thing was going well. So if my business was going really well, but my fitness, maybe I was getting in the gym and going through the motions, but not pushing it, I'd feel like guilty about the fitness, because I'd feel like I'm not pushing hard enough on that, even though the business is doing really well. Well, now I just define the moments as, this is a moment for business, this is a moment for fitness. And that way it removes the guilt, knowing that, okay, I'm, the past 3 or 4 months, I was in a moment for business. We were pushing, right? We were pushing on Quick Coach. I was pushing on content. We were pushing on this podcast. And a lot of really good things happened. And my fitness was fine, right? I didn't like crank it. I got into the gym 2 to 4 days a week. And for the most part, I went through the motions. My nutrition wasn't perfect, wasn't great. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. My sleep could have definitely been better. But that's more just having a baby. But my sleep wasn't definitely been better. And I wasn't kind enough to myself during the day to like rest during the day if I had a big sleep, which was important. But we pushed forward on the business. And I didn't feel guilty about that, because I knew that the time would come, and that time is now, where I would flip the switch where, okay, now the business is good and we're going to keep going on the business and recording the podcast and doing content and pushing forward on Quick Coach. But like, all those big things are done now. Now it's time to almost let that ride and just execute, versus like cranking new stuff. Okay, let's flip and let's crank on the fitness part. And the reason that I bring this all up in reference to the last 2 days is I wake up now and I know that my priority that day is actually fitness. It's family, of course, but it's fitness. And when my priority was business, I was checking my phone. I was checking in way, 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 way more, right? Now my priority is fitness, which means that I wake up and I'm actually thinking of my workout that day. And I'm looking and thinking about what I'm doing, almost mentally getting into it. And then when I'm in my workout after I drop off Calvin at school, well, I haven't yet checked social media and gotten wrapped up into social media is just busy now. Like, it's great. This is everything that I worked my ass off for the last year. Like, I'll wake up in the morning and there will be 30 to 50 messages minimum, like, if not more than that, sometimes hundreds. and I try to respond to them. I mean, I don't always, but there's a lot going on. And if I check that before my workout, I'm thinking about it during my workout, and I'm not as focused in my actual workout itself. So the last 2 days has been this switch flipped where I said, okay, now is a time for fitness, right? I'm going all in on fitness until February, which means that I'm not going to check my phone in the mornings because the workouts are actually the most important thing for me right now. And also being kind to myself over the rest of the day. Like, I'm going to be okay taking a bit of a rest or going for a walk if I need to recover during the day or whatever it is. So anyway, I mean, I don't know if that's interesting to anybody else, but I every time that I mention this idea of competing priorities to adults who have a lot of stuff in their life, particularly with families or their own businesses and stuff, you kind of see like their shoulders drop, they're just like, oh shit. Because I felt this so hard for so long, and I couldn't reconcile it. This idea of this thing is going well. Why am I not happy? Why am I not enjoying it? Why am I not okay with it? It's because I feel guilt that in order for this thing to go well, I've had to put so much energy and mental energy and time into it, which means I don't have that mental energy and capacity to put into this other competing priority of mine. And now I feel guilty, which reduces my enjoyment of the first one. Mm-hmm. And this is how I've kind of made sense of it.
But don't you find it? Don't you find that most people just drop the ball on everything else? Like that, my understanding of humanity is that most of the time, if people have competing priorities, there's no maintenance of the other ones, right? I guess it's because I'm a coach and I encounter a lot of people who tell me things like, it's getting busy at work, so I'm not going to start XYZ, or it's the holidays, I'm not going to do this or that. Like, I find that more people they don't maintain the other thing. They just sort of throw the whole thing away. That maybe I'm being cynical. That's my $100 word.
I don't know whether that's true or not.
Maybe it's perception when you're a coach, right? Particularly when you're an entrepreneurial coach, and your day-to-day is, you hear a lot of that feedback from people who are naturally procrastinators, and thank God for them. I need people who can't decide and act. That's the basis for my business, right? They need coaching for that reason. But maybe because I encounter so much of that, I see the planet through those lenses, and maybe it's not fair. Maybe I'm just not being fair to people. Maybe I need a little more Jesus.
I don't know how.
I don't know.
I don't know how much. I don't know how much pressure. I mean, I'm so entrenched in the fitness industry now.
Right.
I don't know how much pressure people who don't exist in the fitness industry, or fitness hasn't been like a major part in their life, how much pressure they actually feel to be healthy and fit. I imagine a fair bit. I mean, I even think about some friends of mine who are not in good shape at all, unfortunately. They still feel pressured to do it. They just can't quite figure out how to make it work. And I mean, the reality of it is that life is way easier when you skip your workouts. There's no questioning that. But life is way better when you don't skip your workouts.
I was about to say, it's way easier that day. Without question. It's easier that day not to skip a workout. But I've got a buddy that's on oxygen. And we were in marching band together in high school. He's got a wound on his leg due to diabetes. So sure. All those days I was getting my dumb ass up to go work out, and he was just chilling. Oh, those days are way easier. But here in the golden time of my life, Jonathan, as I become a silver fox, moving into James Bond territory very easily, I might add, just a gentleman's gentleman, a man about town, a man of leisure, as they say. At this point, it's way At this point, it's way easier that I got up to do. It's way more convenient that I did the workout. So yeah, it's convenient initially, but eventually it becomes wildly inconvenient. I get what you're saying.
I agree. I don't know. I mean, I feel like everybody's got these kind of competing priorities. This is how it makes sense to me. Whether fitness is super important to people right now or not, I don't know. I can't really speak for that. I think that everybody intuitively understands that being healthy is valuable. But how valuable is it versus all their other competing priorities? I don't know what that is. And so I don't have an answer for you.
But let me say, Jonathan,
go for it.
Not to interrupt you, but I want to interrupt you and say this. Let me just say that I mean that as a compliment to how you're perceiving yourself, because I just think so many more people, they're not maintaining the other one or two competing priorities at all, right? Mm-hmm. I see more people, I don't have time for this shit, throw it away, right? I'm just only kind of maintaining my health right now while I build a multi-million-dollar business. Like that's, most people don't see, my perception is most people don't do it that well, at least. I'm happy if I can maintain my business. Maybe it's not excelling while I'm excelling in my wellness, or I can maintain my wellness while I'm excelling in personal relationships that I don't tell any of you about ever. Like, I'm okay with those things being maintained as one or two things are excelling, because my perception is that most people can only focus in one place at all, and they absolutely throw everything else away.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is something that Allison and I talk a lot about, that I struggle with a tremendous amount, is if I don't feel like I'm actively pushing the envelope on something, I feel like I'm wasting my time. It's my existential crisis. It really is.
Right.
I'm like, I take a step back, and every time that I will speak to a friend, I mean, other friends in business, even who have done quite well, and they're like, bro, you have the perfect life. Like people like outlookers at me, like, what, you just like basically get to like get up and make some content, and then you have like 4 businesses that make money for you that you don't operate yourself, and you get to work out in the middle of the day, and you get to spend time with your family. Or if Calvin has a PA day, you're just like, I'm just not going to work that day. They're just like, bro, you have the perfect life. But meanwhile, I'll look at other people and I'm like, oh, but he's doing so well. I'm like, yeah, but I wouldn't trade my life with him. I'm not okay ever with just being. And it's my existential crisis. It's really something that I struggle with a lot. Yes. Is that it's weird though, because I feel like I would not have gotten to the point where things are structured this way if I wasn't that way, right? If I wasn't the type of person who always needed to push stuff forward, I wouldn't have gotten to the point where now, like 12 years into my whatever it is, second, third career that I'm in,
right?
If it wasn't at that point, I probably wouldn't have these things built. But the type of psychology that's messed up about me that helped me build these things is also the type of psychology that like brings me down and stops me from appreciating it.
Right. Duality. May I talk to you for 30 seconds as a non-licensed therapist in a condescending tone with the third party initiation, but with a caring nurturer's voice?
Yes, but only if you tell me what instrument you played in the marching band.
I play the trumpet. So maybe John is doing okay.
That must be that ladies must love that. I'm just saying
they do. Clearly. I mean, you guys. That's obvious, John. Let's skip past.
Okay, Amber. Important question.
Yes.
2 guys are walking down the beach.
Nobody wants to ukulele.
We don't need to playing a trumpet.
There's no need to rehash this. There's no need to rehash this, John. But what I want to say is maybe Little John and Big John, maybe they're doing okay, buddy.
What?
Maybe Jonathan is good enough for Jonathan right now. And Jonathan can be satisfied with that. Maybe Jonathan can try a little tenderness. How about that? What do you think about that, Jonathan?
Every time I take a step back and consider the situation and how things are, I'm like, nah, things are good.
That's pretty good, John.
Things are good. This season of my life, things are good. We went through a lot to get to this season of my life.
Right.
The miscarriages, cancer diagnosis, with business upheavals. We went through a fair bit. But this season of my life, things are good. And I don't think that I need to really push it. I have a 5.5-year-old. I have a 7-month-old.
That didn't make sense.
I
but
can
I'll allow it.
spend. Why?
You said a 7-month-old, but we can move past it.
I have a 5.5-year-old, and then I have a 7-month-old.
Okay.
I can like. This is the dream: is spending time with your young family in this season.
Yes.
But then it's like, but if I don't push right now, then I will be forgotten. Then I will fail. Meanwhile, I take a look back. I'm like, the amount of shit that's happened over the years in business, and the amount of times I've had to reinvent myself.
Yes.
When you work online, every 2 years, you're forced to reinvent yourself. Every 2 years, the industry turns over, which is why so many people burn out and leave.
Yes.
Which is why so few are around for a long time, and it's so special when they are, because things just change so quick. And like Amber and I have shown an incredible amount of fortitude of just, hey, we're going to be here. We're going to figure this out. Which brings me to W's. Can I talk about W's on our sheet?
I want you to.
So some asshat.
Here we go.
I love a good asshat story.
So some asshat. So we're posting these clips on Instagram in a new account called Goodman Show Clips. I haven't really promoted it yet, but you can go there in IG. It's just called Goodman Show Clips. Mm-hmm. And we'll post a few clips a day from the show of like hard-hitting stuff or funny stuff or something like that. And some asshat started making fun of my lisp. He started making fun of like my W's on there. And I'm like, what is wrong with you that you need to go to an Instagram channel that has 260 followers where you're going to be the only comment because it's a brand new thing, and you're going to make fun of the person's voice that's speaking into a microphone from your account behind a computer? Like, who hurt you? And B, like this, the biggest problem about this is like, I'm fine. I mean, I know that I roll some letters. I know that I have a bit of a speech impediment. Like, I get that, right? And it was something that I was very self-conscious about when I was younger. But when you do shit like that, Señor Asshat, it doesn't affect me, but it might stop somebody else from putting themselves out there.
Right.
And that I'm not okay with.
And somebody right? People make these comments as if their friends and family members aren't also seeing the commentary that they make. And it's you just don't know who's going to see what your behavior is and how that's going to play out. But you can't get good things back from the universe being an asshat. Right.
Being an asshat.
You just really can't. I've not seen. Also, I don't know how Instagram is a platform where you can't reply with audio or video. So I don't know how you make fun of a speech impediment through text. I'd really like to see that. That's got to be very imaginative.
It's deleted in their block, so it does not. But and then the other part of it, of course, is like social media is the new resume, like it or not. Yeah. Like when I hire people, I search them online. Not just social media, but I search them online. Because you can fake stuff on a resume. You can highlight good stuff. You can't fake stuff about who you really are going back. And people have gotten fired for stuff they say and do on social media. Like, you're not hiding. And so I think you need to be careful of that too. Okay. Sapphire and the Mayor. What is clicking? Whose is that? Can we turn off that? Yeah.
I just turned back on.
Like somebody's computer is beeping, bopping, beeping, bopping, beeping, bopping. Is it me? Maybe it's me. I don't know. I like how I complain about other people, and then I. Beep, beep. No, it's a notification. I normally have notifications turned off, but I guess I have.
The phrase "whoever smelt it dealt it" comes to mind here, Jonathan.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was you that pooed it.
That's
Maybe little Jonathan needs to poot every once in a while.
Can we not
Maybe
say
you
little
need to fart
Jonathan?
jump.
It's really
I don't know.
bothering me.
Sugar Little John.
Sapphire in
Maybe
the
Little
Mirror.
John. Yes,
got
Sapphire
together-
in the Mirror.
We got together with some friends last couple days ago. We got together with some friends, and he runs a premium tutoring service. So like kids tutoring, school tutoring, right? And actually, tutoring has a lot of parallels to personal training. They're very similar businesses in a lot of ways, where the majority of people who are tutors are not going to be tutors for the rest of their life. It's largely like a side gigger type profession. It's teachers, it's students, it's that type of thing. And there's kind of a lack of like seriousness amongst their job a lot of the time. There's also a serious lack of standards across their profession. So there's a lot of parallels to personal training. And then of course there's, tutors that cost a lot. There's tutors that don't cost very much, and there's a big difference in how does. Anyway, so he runs a premium tutoring service, and this is how he got his clients. He spent $2,500 for a charity dinner that the mayor was hosting, and he attended the charity dinner for a plate at a charity dinner, right? And he was, of course, the only person who ran a tutoring service at this event. He got to know the mayor of Toronto well as a result of it. He's now the tutor for the mayor's niece, or his company is the tutor for the mayor's niece. And he secured a contract, a huge contract, for inner city tutoring sponsored by the government.
Nice.
And I bring this up because you might think, $2,500 for a seat at like a dinner, but he doesn't market any other way. He goes to places where there are people who have money to pay, who are connected, and have money to pay for premium types of services. And he shakes their hand. There was somebody who was in our community years back, personal trainer, fitness guy, and he did really, really well. And it was the same type of thing. He wanted to sell high ticket transformation packages. He wanted to sell packages for $5,000 plus to high net worth individuals. Well, he didn't go on Instagram and talk into a camera with no. What he did is he joined as many business masterminds as he could that cost $10,000 plus. And he was the only fitness person in any of these masterminds, because by definition, the types of people who are in these things are people who are higher net worth. They're also pre-selected as the type of person who spends money on online communities. And so the type of person who's going to spend a high amount of money on an online community is also the type of person who's going to spend a lot of money on like a high ticket fitness transformation program. And so it goes back to our Bolton Foods example. If you want people who spend a lot of money on things, on types of services, you need to go to places where these people exist in their world and show up. And you don't actually have to do anything else, because none of these people, do you think the mayor went on, this guy's name's Raul. Do you think the mayor went on Raul's social media and was like, well, let me see what Raul thinks about tutoring based off of his Instagram account. Does he make good reels? No, he shook his hand. There's something about, they call it belly to belly. There's something about meeting people belly to belly, in their space.
Ambivalent.
No, belly to belly.
Yeah.
Okay, when you go and shake somebody's hand, it's like, hey, we're going to meet belly to belly on this.
I dare you to say that to someone.
Right. What?
He's already said it to us. And the 250.
Yeah, we have the safety of distance, though. I'm curious to see that in person. Hey, man, you want to go belly to belly?
Man, you want to go belly
Nope.
to belly? Yeah.
Jonathan, I love this point though, because you and I were. I don't know if you're. So first of all, how did this story come up at dinner? Like, it's just this is just a story anecdotally that you know about the friend that you had dinner with, or was this discussed at dinner?
Well, we were hanging out.
Oh,
we went to their place. They bought a new house, so
Okay.
we went to their place to hang out. They've got a new baby too, and we were just talking. Awesome. And he was telling me about this government contract. And I asked him. I was like, "So how do you get that? Like, how does that how does that work? Like, who goes to who? Because you can't just like call up the government and you're like, hi, I have a tutoring service. I think this would be great for a big inner city program that doesn't exist.
Right.
Like how does that come about? And so then he told me the story of, how it of course came about.
May I speak to the government, please?
Well, that's also a great way to learn. Yeah, this is the government. Hello. But like that's also like a really good way too of learning. Like anytime somebody tells you something like this, you're just like, tell me how that happened.
Right.
Like what? Like how? Like how do you go from I tutor high net worth individuals,
right,
kids at private schools and stuff like that, and help them get into prestigious colleges across Canada and the United States and stuff. Right. I tutor those to I'm now tutoring the mayor of Toronto's niece and have secured a contract for tutoring inner city youth. How?
The reason I asked that question is because you said something in the story that reminded me of something that we were going to talk about before Appgate happened. Every time I say that, I'm going to lean into the mic. Before Appgate took place.
Man, remember that, Amber?
Right.
What?
It was like
Appgate?
a week ago.
Nah, everything's gone by so fast.
It's
Dated them. My brain's let it go.
She's repressed it. That won't come out until therapy many years from now, Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I asked, because we were talking about something, and it's something. So, full disclosure, we have a Google form that I very rarely participate in that helps us keep track of what we're going to talk about on the show. And I couldn't put this into the show because there was no link. But it was a discussion that you shared on your stories about the fact that a coach might be great at social media, but that doesn't mean that they're a great coach, versus the fact that they may be very poor at articulating things on social media, but they could be in fact a tremendous coach. You talked about the fact that this person...
It's actually two very distinctly separate and different skill sets.
Exactly. Exactly. And I saw the clip on your stories and I was like, well, this is really interesting to me because I never really thought about it. As a coach who sells his wares on the online, on Al Gore's internet, I try to be very good at both things, right? But the realization is there's probably not a tremendous amount of coaches that excel in presenting themselves online as well as being magnanimous coaches, another $100 word. So, what's your thoughts about that? Yeah.
It's also a time thing.
Right.
Think about it this way. Social media right now is self-selecting for lesser quality people across any industry. Because by definition, if you work in a job 6 to 8 to 10 hours a day, and you are actively involved in that profession every day, you're going to become better and better and better and better at that profession. Mm-hmm. But you can't create the type of content people who create content basically all day create if you're working in that job 8 hours a day. So if you're training clients, 6 clients a day, 8 clients a day, there is no way in hell you're making the same quality of content as somebody who never works with clients. Right. And so the only way to reconcile this is to try to find people who have put in the hours, who have put in the time, maybe in the last decade, who now have acquired a secondary skill set and are basically full-time content creators. But it's very difficult to find those people because, again, they're very different skill sets. What makes a great coach is somebody who understands how to speak to somebody, is somebody who understands how to individualize that for the person, who understands that humans are humans are humans. And there's a lot of humanity in what we do. But when we communicate online, it has to be in absolutes. When we communicate online, it has to be in short form snippets. Well, the real world doesn't work that way, does it? And so the way you communicate online is very different than the way you communicate in person if you are good at both. Now, you can learn those two skill sets, but they're very much things that you turn on and that you turn off. But the biggest thing is that the people who are truly great at their craft. Think about Joe Dowdell.
Right.
Think about Joe, who worked with us for a while. Joe is truly great at his craft. Ran a gym in New York City for 20 years. This guy has, I don't know if there's anybody who has the same type of resume as him. We're talking Olympic medalists in everything from fencing to a whole bunch of different sports, to top Victoria's Secret models, to NBA basketball players, to MMA athletes, to general executives. If you're really great at one sport, you go deep into that one sport, and you don't, like the fact that he is able to get people to the highest level in the world in as many different things as he's done. Well, the reason that he does that is because he's a true practitioner. Joe doesn't create content, does he? You've probably never heard of him, listener, have you? You should probably learn from Joe and not box jump Josh, who trained clients for a year and a half and then decided that they were good looking and they can do all these fucking funny like body tricks that get attention online. Not saying that box jump Josh has anything wrong with him, but there's no way in hell he knows as much about training in the human body as Joe does. Right. But you don't hear about Joe. And that's the nature of how social media is. And that's there's a pro and there's a con to eliminating all the gatekeepers. Previously, you had gatekeepers for all of the information in our industry. You had the Men's Health, you had the publishers.
Yeah. And
in order to get yourself, your own name out, your word out, your knowledge out, you kind of had to go through the gatekeeper. Right? So Men's Health had to ordain you as somebody who is worth listening to, or T-Nation, or whatever, right? Well, now you don't at all, and that's why these publications are largely gone. Now, I think that this is a net positive, because in any system where there's a decentralization, basically what happened before is there was a centralization of knowledge, where there's a couple central places, and the problem with centralization of knowledge is it becomes for profit. It becomes obviously for the interest of that knowledge base. I've spoken to somebody, a lot of the exec editors and chiefs of Men's Health and stuff like that, I know now because they worked for us for a while, a bunch of them. And I spoke to one of them, and this is what they said. They said, half of our magazine is about men's fashion and clothing. None of our readers care about it. The only reason why we have it is because our magazine is funded by advertisements.
Right.
And the people who pay for advertisements are things like perfumes and men's luxury brands. And in order to have the advertisements that allow us to make the magazine, we have to create content that's related to the advertisements that we know doesn't serve our audience.
Right.
And this is why this is what happens with centralization, right? With decentralization, you can go bit piece. And so with decentralization, what happens is that basically there's a pendulum that's always swinging. And this pendulum, starts to center in the middle at a certain point where like everybody's kind of happy for a little bit. Everybody kind of accepts what's going on. And then something happens and knocks it askew. And then the thing goes wild for a while and everybody is confused. And so when decentralization started to happen, when social media was coming out and stuff like that, that pendulum basically got knocked askew again and started to bump right out. And everybody's confused and nobody knows what they're doing. And it's like we're in high school again and everybody's peacocking and nobody quite knows like who they are, or what they're supposed to do, whatever, right? And then that pendulum starts to settle. And now it's kind of settled down into this this social media world that we live in, where people actually don't understand that there's a way that they can market and get their information out and talk to people like without acting like a stupid monkey on social media.
Right.
And something is going to knock that pendulum around again, because it's just simply not true. But people coming up in the game, that's all that they see because it's so thrust in your face. Now, the pros and cons of this, of course, are that when there's a gatekeeper, there's a lot of bias. When there's no gatekeeper, it's decentralized. There's no bias, which means anybody can say anything, and eventually the cream is going to rise to the top. Eventually, good information is going to rise out. Eventually, good people are going to rise above the bad people. And it becomes almost like a decentralized economy is almost like the economy in like a developing world, where you have the very, 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 very wealthy, and they're the few. And then you have the vast majority are basically like beggars on the street. And then you have almost no middle class. And that's kind of what the fitness industry is right now. Yeah. There are very few people who are doing like well and are happy and are stable. There are some that are absolutely crushing it. And then there's a ton of people who are just unbelievably frustrated. And it's because right now, the way that our media works is the vast majority of attention actually goes to a small amount of people. And the problem with that is the small amount of people are often not the best people to listen to. They're just the people who are putting out information in like the most sensationalistic way.
Right.
And I don't know what the solution is or how this is going to fix. I do have faith that it will begin to right itself as people get smarter and smarter. And also, to be honest, like as there gets to be more pain, I mean, how do really bad economies, developing world economies, like there's an overthrow of the government, and then things start to get better, but it's got to get really, really bad before that happens. And I think that that's what's going to happen. So anyway, the issue with all of this, Ren, and I'm glad that you brought it up, is, I mean, the people who are really, really good at what they do are doing the thing that they're really good at. They're the practitioners. And the skill set of doing the thing is very different than the skill set of talking about the thing. And the skill or the time it takes to talk about the thing right now on social media means that by definition, you don't have time to do the thing.
Right. In talking to our students through the Online Trainer Academy, who's sponsored in part Appgate, but in talking to our students from the Online Trainer Academy, one thing that I try to get across to them is that if you can be slightly better than the average trainer at social media, you can separate yourself, because most of your success will come from the fact that you're a good coach, right? Lean into that. Yeah. You need a little bit of social media stuff, sure, but what's most powerful is that you are giving the people who hire you what it is that they hired you to get. Concentrate there. Talk about it a little bit, but don't get frustrated by the fact that you don't have 600,000 followers. Concentrate on the fact that you have 130 of them actually enjoy working with you. That's your sweet spot, right? Because you're not going to compete with a professional social media poster. It's all that they're going to do.
You're not ready to have a lot of followers.
Right.
Like I don't think that's spoken about enough.
Right.
I believe there was a very famous man who once said, "More money, more problems."
Yes. That was P. Diddy, if I'm not mistaken.
P. Diddy.
Puff, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy.
The P man.
Yes.
And so more followers, more problems too. It's a lot to manage. You are think about how much shit goes through your head over the course of a day,
right?
And how weird you are and how negative you feel a lot of the time, towards other people you don't know and have never actually thought about their real intentions or thoughts, or
Right.
believed something about them that you later learned was not true based off of insufficient knowledge. Well, everybody is doing that to you. And imagine now if you had 100,000 people
Right.
doing that. You're in for a world of hurt if you're not ready for it. And also, your business probably isn't ready for it also. We run into big issues with mine. And I mean, I'm not like, I would consider myself like a micro influencer, but we run into an issue where if I put out a call for interest for something, we quite literally cannot handle the responses because I can't employ all the time like dozens of people to respond to messages.
Right.
And so, but if we put out a call for something, it's a very intense short burst of a massive amount of messages and interest, but like it's not always the right kind of interest. There's a lot of people who are not qualified for a lot of the things that we offer, like my mentorship. Like a lot of people will respond to a call for some information about the mentorship, and they're in no way qualified for it. But we have to sift through that, right? We have to talk to them and figure out whether they're qualified, and that's A, expense, paying people to sift through that. B, systems and time, and I can't employ enough people to sift through that because it's not always thousands of people we're sifting through. It's only one time every few weeks or every month or two when I put out a call that there's thousands of people. And it actually becomes a very, very difficult problem to manage where I have to strategically put out calls and structure marketing materials in such a way that manages responses.
Yes.
So but because the problem is that there are always going to be some really good like potential customers and stuff like that in your followers, but there's also going to be a ton of people who are not, and you're going to hear from all of them.
A lot,
and you have to sift through them. So oftentimes, your business quite simply is not ready.
It's not ready
to have a lot of people. And if you grew your social media quick, the reality of it is the quality of those people and how much they know about you and how much they care about you is going to be tiny. Like it's it's not going to be set up for, which is why I stress so much the importance of figure out where you want to go deep and go deep there first, because you've got to build up in a step by step fashion. And to Ren, to your point, where when you do that in a small community, now it could be in person, could be online, but in a very, very small, tight-knit community, well, people know one another. You get somebody who results in a very small, tight-knit community, and you deliver on what's promised. Well, that person, odds are, will share you around that small community. But you can't, so many people are scared to actually do that because they're like, oh, there's, but I'm not going to appeal to millions of people who are doing this. You don't need millions. Like you need 25, 30. And right now you have 3. And so like, have you ever thought that this might be a better way instead of trying to get thousands that you can't even manage the responses right now anyway? Like we run into this with our mentorship, Ren, where people start doing what we tell them. And as a result, there are lots more conversations happening of people that are interested in their services, and it burns them out because they're not ready to have this many people interested in their services. They can't manage it. It's like we got to talk about this more,
right? Because you got to be careful what you wish for, man. There's as a Gen Xer, 70s baby, 80s kid. One of my favorite shows was Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. And there's one famous episode of that cartoon where the coyote actually catches Roadrunner. It was all the rage in the 1980s. It's a big deal. And when he catches him, he holds up a sign. He says, well, now that I've caught him, what am I supposed to do with it? The coyote never considered in the thousands of episodes what he actually might do if he got his hands on this bird, but he spent all his life trying to attain it. And I see people make that same mistake on social media. And I went through the mentorship program that Jonathan is talking about. And I remember being immediately overwhelmed. And I was in the beta group. I mean, I was literally the first person to graduate this program. And I remember being overwhelmed, like, shit, like, how am I going to respond to these 20, I coach women, these 20 women who've inquired, and how the hell am I going to manage them if I get them into my program? It's a very real concern that a lot of people don't even consider. You build it up, you progressively overload a body for a reason. Because if you don't, you're going to throw too much at it too fast. You're going to rest in delayed onset muscle soreness. It's going to reduce your ability to move around, get any non-exercise activity. Or you're going to break something, you're going to snap something. It's the same way with your business, man. You want to progressively overload it to the extent that you're ready for the next thing is slightly uncomfortable, but you can do it, right? Yeah. And then you can maintain it for a little while. But a lot of people, I hear people say, I wish I had more followers. And I simply ask, what would you say to them? Yeah, let's say today you've got 50,000 people hanging on every word. Deliver your message to me. What do you say to them? Exactly. Get good at talking to 50 first, right? The other people will come, but then when you build it around a central mindset, a centralized type of person that you're helping, then you know that all the people that you're talking to are in tune with the message anyway. You don't want a bunch of general followers just for the numbers. It's one of the biggest mistakes I see our coaches that we mentor running into is just sort of that. I think Jonathan called it halo effect. It's or Icarus effect, right? You just flew close to the sun, too close, and your wings melted, and you're falling back at an incredible rate back to Earth. And we see that a lot. It's hard to manage a lot of quote unquote success on social media, if you want to call it that.
Especially if people don't really know you. Especially
right, they don't know
the first thing that I'll do. The first thing that I'll do is if a piece of content that I have pops off and gets me a lot of new followers, the first thing that I'll do is in the 2 or 3 weeks that follow, I will try to lose as many followers as possible right. by posting stuff that is so deeply targeted to the type of person that I want.
Yes.
That it pushes away the people who are not. I don't post more like quote unquote viral stuff. Mm-hmm. I post obscenely targeted stuff to people who work in health and fitness. Because I know that viral piece of content was just a buckshot, right? It definitely gathered some people who are like the type of person who I think could really benefit from listening to me. But it also gathered a whole bunch of people, like the amount of messages that I've gotten in the last 2 or 3 weeks, because I had one thing that went super viral. Amount of messages that I got from people like, "Hey, I'm wondering about a workout for fat loss. Can you help me lose fat?" And I'm just like, this is just not what I do. And there's no point in you following my page. Like, you're not going to be happy here. And I'm not going to like pander to that type of content anyway. You were just attracted by something I did that was one thing that I did that got you to follow me. Yeah. And I don't need that. And so I will purposefully, if something pops off and goes viral, I will purposefully post stuff for a few weeks afterwards to lose as many followers as possible.
Related to this, can I share a pet peeve of mine?
Did you let the dogs out first?
No, because the weather sucks. So they're stuck inside. So you get to listen to the dogs bark. That's Lincoln. Please stop follow trains.
Yes.
Is that still a thing?
Yes.
People
and
do that
it
still?
makes me irrationally angry. Stop.
Oh my God.
Stop now.
There's no way people still do that.
They do. And especially in like, I joined like a bunch of random groups in different topics just because I like seeing how things are connected. And like every one of them, like I'm in an Etsy group. I don't sell anything on Etsy, but I like following to listen to, see how they do things. And that in marketing groups, like you should know better. Stop it. But like in every group I'm in, like, oh, let's do a follow for follow chain on LinkedIn. Like, no, it makes me so angry.
I have a friend who's a copywriting coach. Like he coaches people on sales copy and stuff like that. And he told me last week that he had a refund request for a $47 product from somebody whose email was sevenfigurecoach.com.
Yes.
Oh, that's the
He
best story
screenshot
ever.
that. He probably just bought it to
He did
steal
He
it.
100% did. But like, even you just don't. You just don't.
That's
You
awesome.
don't ask for that refund, man. If you're gonna
could have
market
written it
yourself
off.
as like
Like,
a multi-million
Right.
dollar coach, you don't go and ask somebody for a $47 refund. You just
That's amazing. I love that.
well,
Yeah,
it's like
follow for
the
follow is trash.
who was sending out like the checks for like 2 cents to like big companies to see who would cash it. Do you remember hearing about
that's
that?
funny.
Yeah, and it was like they
No, but
listed
that's
the companies
amazing.
that actually cashed the 2 cent check. It was
Right.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's
That's
a real.
funny.
That's a thing.
I'll have to see if I can find it. Yeah, it was pretty funny story because it just kind of
That's
shows
amazing.
insight into how people think and kind of stuff.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it could just be like the thing about large companies is they just have to hire so many people, and the only way to hire that many people that quick is to set rules that are just like any dolt can
sure.
follow. It's like you could walk into a McDonald's, order a Big Mac, take a bite out of it at the desk, hand it back to them, and say, "I need a refund. This is a bite out of it." And they give you your money back because the only way that they can hire that many people is to just have hard and fast black and white rules
sure.
to say if anybody asks for a refund, give them their money back. Costco's the same thing.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
You can just refund anything. And so that's probably that. It's probably just somebody at the company where there's like, if you get a check, you gotta like
not getting
gotta-
fired
you
over
gotta
not
deposit.
submitting a 2 cent check.
yeah, I know.
Still a funny
but you
story.
you can't give any, especially like people on the ground floor, you can't give them any leeway to think for themselves in those types of positions.
Also, hence why I would
if
never
you're
have a real
hiring
job
at
again.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's another
Same.
thing. But if you're hiring at like that capacity, you just can't.
Yeah,
You can't build. You can't do it and ask people to actually think for themselves.
yeah, for sure.
Which is why there's going to be replaced by robots most likely.